Welcome to Novus Navigator. Join us for this series of conversations with Chicago local entrepreneurs that have carved their own paths to success.
Hi everyone, we're here today with Peter Hostrawser, who is the founder of a movement called Disrupt Education. Peter's also a teacher. He teaches business ed as well as a few computer science topics. Peter's movement, Disrupt Education, you can find it on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, all the social media handles, is all about helping students, high school students in particular, understand that college is not the only path for them. It's about helping students understand that, there are a variety of different ways that you can choose to go to pursue your own careers or your own dreams, and that college isn't the only way to do that. Peter himself has spent some time as an entrepreneur, but he spends most of his time today helping other entrepreneurs pursue their own dreams. And so I think what would be really cool, Peter, is if we just started off by you telling us a little bit about how you sort of got your start in entrepreneurship and maybe how that transformed into education.
Yeah, that's an interesting story. I never went right into teaching. As a matter of fact, I just wrote a blog that my father told me not to go into teaching. I interviewed him on one of my Disrupt Education interviews. So I came out of college as a communication broadcast journalism major. And my senior year, I did an internship in a radio station. I did not like it at all, and I just put all this time and effort and money into that. So right after college, I jumped into doing some bartending. I'm an official mixologist, I think is the name of it. So as I went through that 2-week course, you're feeling really bad about yourself. I just went through all this college. I'm supposed to have this job. I'm supposed to have this car and everything. Keeping up with the Joneses, if you will. I started bartending at a country club and then just started learning from other people. What do they do? What kind of business are they in? Bankers, etc. And so this journey, I went down to Florida afterwards and I just started mowing greens and I started moving around, just trying to see what I was good at. I could have gone back and gone into becoming I can't remember what it's called, like a greenskeeping school, like at Michigan State. And, you got all these things. You're like, I'm not where I need to be. I need more education, formal education. Well, obviously, I'm glad I didn't throw a lot of money into that. I got hired back in Warsaw, Indiana, as a videographer, video producer, because that was some of the stuff that I did in college. So I felt good about that. So when I started that, and I was working with, it was a small startup, and kind of butted heads a little bit with the guy who hired me, in a good way. We were bringing, me and a college roommate of mine who brought me onto the team, we were bringing new ideas, hey, we're really excited about this, and a lot of them, there was a lot of ego involved, and of course I was in my 20s, so I knew everything, but me and the head butted heads a lot. Because I was like, well, we can do this. And he was like, no, we need to do it this way and this way. So there was a lack of freedom. So I decided, you know what? I'm going to start my own. I'm going to do it better. So I became an entrepreneur with my business partner, who was the college roommate. And the first person I went back to one of the bankers at the country club. And at the time, he was a regional manager for First Source Bank and had a lot of connects. I took him one sheet of paper demanding, $27,000, $30,000. This is what we need. Let's go. So he took me through, he literally sat me down and walked me through a business plan at the time. So business model canvases and the smaller things that are out there now, they really weren't evolved yet. So we created a business plan. It was like a 60-page, and I don't write. I hated doing this stuff, but when it's your own, it just flew. All the numbers were on the paper. We had to come out with 5 years of blah, blah, blah. And he was like, look, the bank really doesn't care about that. They're going to look at the capital you have. And if you can back it up, you know what, you're going to get the loan. Mm-hmm. You just want to put this out for yourself and build on this stuff. So we did that for a couple of years. It was hard. We got clients, and then we were like, yay. And then we would go like out and celebrate it away. And then we're like, oh crap, we got to go do another. So I learned a lot about entrepreneurship that way. And at the time I met my wife, and she was an elementary school teacher, and they were having video announcements. So right behind you is the VCR, right? So back in the day, it was old VCRs, and they would put those in the rooms, and we would record the announcements for the whole week. And we're talking 3rd, 4th, and 5th graders. So she was like, we need somebody to do this. We got this editing equipment. We can pay you a little bit of money or whatever. So I volunteered. I mean, I got like, I don't know, like a $5 an hour stipend or whatever, but it wasn't really about that. So I wanted to play and see, okay, these kids, 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade, remember, actually wrote and did the editing like you all are doing, a little bit older linear models, and then basically put it out on the announcements. And as they were doing that, some of the kids were struggling in their classes, in their writing, and their language, and their math, and different things like that. And teachers started coming to me and saying, you know what, this student's doing better at this subject than this subject. So I really started to see that, wait a minute, like kids are learning through something tangible rather than the sit and get or the worksheets. And not to say the teachers were just giving them all that, but there was just a different avenue for this. And the light bulb went off in my head. It's like, well, I want to take this to schools. I want to, and the only way to do that is to become a teacher in the system, if you will. So 18 years ago, I went back to college, and I got a certificate. It wasn't another bachelor's degree. And I became a business teacher. It was the easiest avenue because I had a business minor. And then I just started creating projects within the classes that I was allowed to. And business was the one subject where you could do that. So for the last 18 years, I've been evolving that, trying to get people out of the mindset of the sit and get. It's been an interesting ride, to say the least. So that's kind of how I got into teaching. Hopefully that answers your question.
You talked a little bit about how you went back to college to, become a teacher. I wonder, if you got a lot from that. What were your most valuable takeaways? And if, as a teacher today, you see yourself using more of what you learned from college or sort of what you've gained from, the experiences you've had while being a teacher?
That's a great question. I would say yes and no. I felt like I got just some basics, a lot about like neurology and kind of child development. Those kind of structural things came through. But everything that I did in like the theories classes and it had nothing to do with actually what was going on in the classroom. And since that time, by the way, that was 2000, 2001. We're looking 19 years later. All that is completely wiped out. So even those first 5 to 10 years of teaching, it's changed so much already. The technology that's come into play, the students, the challenges that come with students, and basically the curriculum is similar still, which is bothersome to me. So I went through the best thing that I did was student teaching. It's kind of a throw you to the wolves kind of deal, and I did it at Mishawaka High School in Indiana, the Cavemen. And it was a great experience. I was able to kind of play around with some things, and I remember in the marketing class, literally the guy who taught the class was like, here's what I do. I pick up the paper in the morning, and then we talk about it in class. That was his marketing class, and I thought, that's just dumb. Like, that's not, you might get some conversation, but what are these kids doing? Are they marketing? Are they creating anything? And this is back when print was kind of big, and I did a stint with autotrader.com, so I did some print advertising, and I started bringing in, okay, you guys, we need to sell a car on it. So I kind of used my experiences to do that. I used my experiences in video production to teach. And it was just like a big kind of experiment. And the students really liked it. And again, ego came into play a little bit. The other teacher was like, well, you may want to do it a little differently, but the kids were loving it, And that's where I learned that project-based learning was key. They really want to do something. They don't just want to report on something or checkbox. Many of them. Some of them that works. So to answer the question, did going back to college help me? I believe it did, and the reason why though was because I was way more focused. I was well into my 20s when I went back. When I started college, I was barely 18 back early on in we'll say the 90s. And I think that lack of focus was just what you're supposed to go do, right? My master's classes, I got like all A's because you're focused. It was like, I know I need this and I want to go through it. And yes, there were some classes that I thought that, and I still think are unessential. It's just filling in the gaps, paying some people or whatever. But once you have that focus, like you really understand, okay, I'm going to do this, I'm going to jump through this hoop, we're good.
So did you come into your teaching career as someone that recognized a problem and wanted to solve it? Did you come in wanting to disrupt education, or did you sort of find that calling and that mission as a teacher as you grew through your teaching experiences?
Yeah, I think it was a journey through education to get into whatever disrupting it looked like. I initially came in looking at it in a new way. Like there is something that I can create that is project-based, and I started reflecting on my own education in high school, and there were a few times in my own education that I really learned how to do things, and it was never reading a book and taking a test. I realize some people learn that way, but what I started to understand is the one thing that I reflected on was a speech and drama class. So we had to do a lip sync in front of our whole class, and I'm an intrinsic person by nature, so even like in leading others and everything, I'm fairly intrinsic, and I was really intrinsic in high school because you're always thinking, oh no, what is everybody going to think? So I picked one of my favorite movies, Blues Brothers, picked Minnie the Moocher, which is a song by Cab Calloway, and he sang it before they were going to be on stage, if you know the movie. At the time, I knew the song in and out. I've seen the movie like 400 times. It's one of the best movies ever, in my opinion. But at the time I had contacts. I had since had laser surgery, but then I had sunglasses that were prescription sunglasses. So I put them on over so I couldn't see the audience. And it was a blues kind of riff, so it was, the sunglasses worked. And I remember getting on the stage just being terrified, and when I did it, I killed it. And a couple of people came up and said, man, that was awesome. And that boost of confidence, that one instance of creating something and going outside my comfort zone stuck with me. So in my reflection, as I went through into my 19th year of education, in the beginning, I think you're just trying to survive. You're trying to keep your head above water. I got to get, all this curriculum down, understand my students. You're overwhelmed. We look after 125, 150 students every day. And then you're on stage every day, right? So when you come into it, you start to figure out who you are as a teacher and different things like that. And there's you have to be flexible with yourself. You can't come in as a perfectionist. Over the years, though, I started seeing more and more students becoming detached, connected to, their technology. We're fighting against Facebook, we're fighting against now Instagram and those things. And I say fighting against because I don't think we need to fight against. I think we can use it in a different way, but I'll get to that. So I started thinking, okay, how can I capture these students who are walking through here? They have to be here. They're miserable. There's a lot of teachers that are miserable. No one likes to come into school. So I just started playing around with things. And as I evolved through my teaching career, I just started seeing, okay, well, what if I bring businesses in? What if I can give these students a chance to make money? And a couple of schools ago, one of my best projects was an accounting class. And it was a very low-income school. And I was like, hey, guys, you want to make some money? And especially like students who are without, they're like, wait, I can make money in the classroom? I was like, yeah, absolutely, let's do it. Pulled some strings, sure it was illegal, but basically said, you guys want to sell candy out. At the time I was a member of Sam's Club, Costco was still evolving. And I was like, I will go buy any kind of candy you want. You go sell it. You got to give me my cut back, so you can sell it for obviously more than, you know, I paid for it. And then what you have to do is, in order to keep that money, you got to run it through the accounting cycle, right? And it was brilliant. I mean, we had kids walking away with $50 a day. You know, they were moving, and you know, this was before they got really strict in the cafeteria and such. But kids were doing it before and after school and everything like that. So I remember that was a spark, you know. And then the next year there were more kids taking the accounting class, right? So they were like, so I figured, okay, there's more kids who learn this way. Or this isn't the only way, but this is a good way to make it tangible for them. So from that point on, that was my goal, is to just, hey, how can I create projects like that a student can actually walk away with something? Not always cash, but you know, can they start to build portfolios? Can they start to make people look at them and say, this is what I can do, rather than what I can't do? Because as educators, we're taught to say, okay, you can't do this, so we got to shove more of it down your throat. I mean, that's really what we do. You're bad at algebra. Well, you need to take 3 different algebra classes now. But we never look at what they're good at all the time. And I think we're missing a huge opportunity in that. When we teach students, you know, I just had a conversation with a young man who's pretty burnt out, and it's, you know, freshman, sophomore year is a huge burnout year. And he writes brilliant kind of, you know, nonfiction, you know, fiction, science fiction stuff. And as soon as I took an interest, I'm like, let me read some of your stuff. He's like, really? I'm like, yeah, let's go. Because no one here is designed to, this whole system is designed to, okay, you need to conform. Mm-hmm. And you need to get this test grade, and you need to get this on your ACT or SAT. But now that's changing, and that's what's so exciting, is technology is bringing that in. So that evolution of basically trying to stay above water, then starting to understand, okay, this is starting to work with more and more kids, and then just building on it. That's kind of my evolution of it. There was a day, maybe 4 or 5 years ago, that I questioned myself and said, what if I gave 100% every day, right? And I had to come up with that myself. Gary Vee helped me a little bit. But I was like, what if I go 100%? You know, I'll be exhausted, I'll be tired, but man, I'm going to have a lot of fun in school. And since that day, there's been peaks and valleys, but for the most part, the majority of my day in school is just relationships and building and having fun. And yeah, at the end of the day, there's a check mark I got to get through with the students, but they know that the why of that, and then we just move and shake through this whole thing. And that, to me, is invigorating. I want more teachers to see that. I don't want them to come into this space and just say, okay, I got to do this for 20 more years. I've done that. I've looked at, okay, if I retire, I got 28 more years and I'm going to make good money. But then in my head, I'll be like in my 60s. And why do I want to wait? So through that whole kind of evolution, that's kind of how it ended and where I'm at right now. And every year it gets a little more difficult because I want to be more flexible with what we do in these buildings. And it moves a lot slower than times we're in right now. So
you talked about how you got, you know, the kids to sell candy, and how that might have been illegal. I wonder if, you know, as someone who is focused on disrupting education, I wonder if you find it difficult to do so because of all the red tape that surrounds education.
Yeah, the short answer is absolutely. You have to have leaders and community members who are willing to take risks. There are places that do it. I have the privilege of going out to Iowa Big, which is a couple schools in Iowa where what happened in Cedar Rapids about 10 years ago, they had the floods and everything, and when they started to rebuild, they basically brought the community and the school together. And the school is basically half the day the kids are in regular, traditional like school, and then the second half they are working on their projects with the community. So that was a bold move, and I spoke to one of the co-founders of that, and I'll be interviewing him with that end of March. He said there are still teachers and there are still administrators that are strongly against that. So I think a lot of people are afraid, right? They're afraid of their jobs, which I get, but I think there's a way where we can take a math teacher or a world language teacher, anybody, and morph them into a reality of that student. There's schools out there that create, it's basically the lean startup school. So they'll use the incubator program or any other program for that matter. And they take a year to unlearn, like reteach the students to become self-advocates. I think that's one of the biggest things that people are challenged is because when we as teachers give up the control, it's like, well, why do you need us anymore? Well, you need mentors in the classroom. You need people who can help you connect with others, who can guide you through that problem solution set. It's just that we don't have the answers anymore because, like Jack Ma said, knowledge is dead. If you want knowledge, it's anywhere. You just pull out your phone, you look at that, what you do with that knowledge in your own self, and when you create it from that, that's basically what you need to know. You need to know, and this is straight from Jack Ma, so if he's watching, let him know. You need to learn values, beliefs, you need to learn teamwork, you need to learn independent thinking, and then you need to learn how to help others. And you put those 5 things together, the robots can't do that. So that's where we're at. The robots can sit in the class and listen to us and then take notes and then check marks on tests. They can do that. And they're going to do that, and they're already doing that. It's the human side of it that we're just missing in education because we're categorizing it. And I'm strictly speaking from secondary ed because that's really what I know. So that's, like you said here, the bell system, right? It's terrifying. I feel like I'm still in Ford's assembly line, and I feel like I'm still just, okay, this piece is coming, put the widget on, go. And that's the student. Okay, here you are, here's your information, put it on the test, go. And then they're coming through this, and the bells are ringing, and it's very structured time. There's a very few amount of people who actually can learn in a 48-minute period, and the way we cut it up. And we take math over here and business over here and English over here, and then they don't intersect. And it's asinine, it's stupid. I mean, so I don't know why we still do it. So the red tape in that is traditional. I think a lot of decision makers and people who have been in that, it's just like every generation will call the next generation lazy. I've read it over and over and over again. Even the greatest generation, quote unquote, the World War II generation, where the United States, everybody's celebrating, they were called boring or they didn't work hard and all this stuff. Every generation, because we're afraid to give up the power. And I feel like this generation is starting to figure out that, you know what, I don't need all this stuff. I can do it a different way. We just have to reteach them. They're in the system for 12 years of being told what to do. The bells are ringing. Go here, sit down, do this. There's no choice, there's no independent thinking and all this. And then we wonder why even after college, because there's a lot of things in college where it's the same way. It's like, well, you did that, now we're going to do it 4 more years. And yeah, there's some internships and some flexibility in colleges, but then they get to businesses and business owners are like, well, why don't you know how to take this and take the initiative to do something like this? Why are you still in the permission mindset and not the value-based mindset? And it's because we've done it for 12. You do that, anything, it's Pavlov, man. So that's kind of, that's the hardest part. And the small wins in a system don't go very far, unfortunately. There's a lot of people against you. This Iowa Big project it's huge. It's doing great things. They've opened up a second school. These students are doing very good, not only on the tests, but even in a couple of them got into Ivy League schools. So like, we're actually doing it. We're getting these students to, quote unquote, the college path. There is another path that I'll talk about in a minute, but it's just that people are so into, well, that they're not doing it the right way. Well, who cares? You're looking at a destination. You're not looking at a journey. And I think we need to look at our journeys in education a lot more.
So, if I'm remembering correctly, there's an income disparity between the students that attended OPRF, your previous high school, and students that are attending Glenbard East High School, where these students may be, not so high income as the OPRF kids. I wonder if that is shown, if that impacts the way that you teach your students or interact with your students.
No, not really. I think one of the things that I have to change is that there's a mindset that because many of our students are without, that well they can't really do that. And again, I've been guilty of that. It's like, oh, okay, this kid hasn't been exposed to that. So in that area, yeah, you have to come in at a different angle. Some students at my previous school were exposed to amazing things. They've been to like a huge theater production downtown, or they have parents that are, vice presidents of companies and things like that. There's still people here who are like that. But you have to meet the students where they are. So, the way that I do it doesn't change. I mean, it's really just getting to know your students and getting to know what they're interested in and meeting them where they are.
And you've been able to do that. There's one student in particular who was at one of our events, and I think you gave him business cards. Could you tell us a little bit about that story and that student?
It's when students start to believe in you early. I don't want to say I use that student, but I want to learn more from that student at what makes them click. So I learn as much from the students as they're learning from me. I don't care about power in the classroom. I really don't. Obviously, like if somebody's, I wouldn't say disrupting, but interrupting somebody else's learning, then yeah, we have a challenge there. We need to fix that. But this particular student was very interested. He started asking really deep questions. Okay, so what is your mindset, and what if I did that? And then he would start to experiment with it. And basically over the weekend, even this last weekend, he was like, I'm going to finish this class. I'm going to try to get it done in 2 weeks. And I was like, holy cow, all right, let's go. Nothing's really stopping you. You just have to allocate your time, but I was like, don't burn yourself out. Mm-hmm. And he did a lot over the weekend, and he was like, I still need this because this needs to help me. I can't find the answer to this. So I'm like, okay, so I aided him a little bit with that. But, here's a kid who really wanted, like he was willing to go and meet new people, conversate with some of the connections that I had, and that not only like helps him, that helps me understand, okay, so what do these connections want out of a young person? So I'm just constantly learning. So I was like, what you need is business cards. The story is, out of that, is there was a meetup over in COD, and there was a couple other entrepreneurs on a panel, and they were talking about diversity and a lot of female leaders and non-white leaders. And they were on the panel, and he's like, well, what do I say to these people, this young man I was working with? And I was like, well, here's what you need to do. Just, do you have any business cards or anything? He's like, no. And it was coming up like in a day, so there's no way I was going to turn it around that fast. I was like, take a piece of paper, write down your information, and hand it to him. And after that, my Connect, who actually put us up to going to this thing, said that was all the entrepreneurs were talking about. Here's this kid with a ripped piece of paper with his name and address and his contact stuff on there. And from that point on, I was like, okay, I'm buying this kid some business cards, because that he's willing to go that far for it. And there's one thing that I've learned is a lot of people will tell you, yeah, I'm going to do that. But the ones that really go through with it and do it are the ones that you can actually start opening doors for even more. I've learned the hard way that some people are like, yeah, I'm going to do that. And then I started opening doors, and then they don't really do anything. And then I start losing a little bit of trust with the Connect or whoever the door I'm opening with them. So that's what I'm trying to teach these students, to become self-advocates of themselves, create their own future, be okay with failure with it. And then if you can show me that you did something, and then I can tangibly show another Connect that's going to open the door for you. If you just say, I'm going to do all this stuff, and frankly, you just BS your way through it, then everybody knows that, and you're not going to go anywhere. But again, I can't blame them for that mindset, because we've been taught all right, you're in third grade, you're going to be a doctor. And you don't know anything about anything, right? So I think that's where I want to be. I want these students to become self-advocates like that young man.
So as these students are, progressing toward graduation, they're taking their ACTs, they're getting ready to apply for colleges, they're getting ready to take out student loans. What would you suggest that they consider before they make any of those decisions?
Yeah, I want them to consider why. That's it. So why are you doing what you're doing, right? We're almost to $1.7 trillion in college debt in the United States right now. Why are we doing this, right? Like why are we putting people into debt, and especially with lower income students, right? That could be the first in their families to go to college. I think it's even more important not just to go. Well, hopefully they're getting a free ride, But I think that we need to step back and take a look at why we're doing what we're doing. These students will I'm going to college. And every time I hear that, I'm like, why? I don't know. So I'm not going to give my son, when he turns 16, a $100,000 Ferrari when he doesn't really know how to drive that well yet, right? So why are we forcing students to take $50,000, $60,000, $70,000 price tag on education when they don't really know what they want to do? To me, that's almost child abuse. I mean, that's the way I see it. Look, it works for some people, and I don't want to hate on college. I know some people who always wanted to be like a teacher, so they're like, I'm going to go right into education, and that's what they do. But I know a lot more people who have no idea, and they start to pay the college to go through their basic courses, and they're paying the college to try to find themselves, when there's an easier way to do it. It's basically understanding who you are, take some risks, go out there and work, talk with some people, find a mentor, shadow, build your portfolio right now. And I previously said, okay, there used to be the three options. Going into college was one, going into the trades was the second one, and the military was the third one, or right into the workforce, right? There's that fourth one out there. And that fourth one is now you can build your own credibility through an apprenticeship program, through a gap year program, through a coding boot camp, and you can get jobs, $80,000, $90,000, $100,000 a year jobs within the first couple of years of your employment now, because the need's there. And less companies are looking at college degrees. They're realizing, wait a minute, if you can do something, if you have value rather than a credential, now I can see what you've done, and now I can fit you into our culture if it works. If you have the credential and the value, even better, right? So you're still looking at that traditional aspect of things where, okay, a college degree, okay, you got a college. All a college degree really tells you is that you stuck it out and you got yourself a certification, right? On the surface. If you don't build something underneath that, if you don't build a portfolio of what you've created, or a storyline of all the different things that you've done, then no one knows about that. You can put it on a resume, which is nice, it's a piece of paper, but how many people lied on a resume, right? Cover letter, only too much. But what if you have something that says, you know what, I've created a website, you guys may need a website, or I've created this marketing on Instagram, and you guys you're looking for a marketer. Well, here's what I've done, right? It's better than, hey, here's a marketing degree. So those are the types of things that I stress with my students. You catch flack for it, right? Our schools are rated on what the ACT or SAT score is, GPAs, sometimes attendance, and how many kids go to college. Why? Why is it rated on that? That's only one way to success, which it works, but not for a lot of our students. They say there's up to 70% burnout rate by your senior year. Senioritis. Everybody's like, oh, this kid's just lazy. No, he's been doing the same thing for 4 years in a row. Who wants to do that in a bell system where you have to walk around like cattle in a classroom? A kid's ready to go off and to create something. They're itching to do something. I mean, you saw it in class today. Like a couple kids are like, hey, I want to do this or I want to do that. And I'm like, let's go. Like, what's stopping you? a lot of it is like some of it's busy work that we're putting kids through. So yeah, to answer that question, going straight into college, I would hesitate, ask, why are you doing this really? And, you know, for me, it was, my parents were like, you're going to college. So I was like, okay. But I know, like, I graduated high school when I was 17 because I was just on that edge of the birthday year or whatever. And I had no idea what I wanted to do until I got on a radio station, like in the college, about halfway through it. And then I started going that route. But there was still a lot of BS in it. There was a lot of things that I didn't want to do, and I felt like I could have advanced my career a lot more. So, yeah.
So I'm on Twitter a bit. I know that the educational community on Twitter is fairly active. There are a bunch of change makers out there, and I wonder, you know, with all of this education reform happening and you know, all of these new educational movements being born, I wonder what you think education might look like, you know, say 100 years from now.
It's a great question. 100 years is a long time. I don't know if I can go that far out, like, you know, 1984. But I will say that if education doesn't change the way it does things, it's that 80-90% of everybody going to college is going to drop drastically because there's a faster way to get into where you're going to go. I like to talk about like WeWork, right? And it was Mission U, and then WeWork bought out their program where it was business analytics. 1-year program. They were working with great, huge companies like Uber and all these other companies that are Silicon Valley companies. So you go to business analytics in a college, right? Or this WeWork program, they're still redoing it. And there's a lot of these programs out there, but the one is, Mission U was 3 trimesters, right? You have first trimester is you go deep into what business analytics really are and all the different types. Second one is, what do you do with you know, the teamwork and the social emotional and understanding self-awareness. And the third part was an internship, right? And it was hard to get in these things. You had to go through a really tough, it had nothing to do with test scores or anything, but you had to actually create something to get into this. So if you created something and it sucked, they would like, all right, well, maybe you want to try next. And there's a lot of models like this. College, you might be in your second half of your sophomore year where you start to even look at business analytics, right? So you see that time frame where there's just a bunch of gen ed classes, and you know, I know Dr. Wall says it as well, right? Like he's like, a lot of those is colleges are making money on remedial courses. And so you have all this time and stuff wasted where these guys are shooting right into that internship program.
Peter, thanks so much for joining us here today. I think that our students took a lot away from this discussion, particularly about what they should be considering as they make the move from high school to their colleges or their careers. And so I really appreciate you taking the time. We learned a ton, and I hope we can have you again sometime soon. Thanks so much.